All right, so it only gives me a 5 minute at a time, so I'm just going to keep going here from where we left off. So, it says the movement first expanded to other Italian city states such as Venice, Milan, Bologna, Ferrara, and Rome. Then, during the 15th century, the Renaissance idea spread from Italy to France and then throughout Western and Northern Europe. Although the European countries experienced their Renaissance later than Italy, the impacts were still revolutionary. So, question three is asking us predict under what means do you think the Renaissance eventually spread to Europe? Stop and think back to other topics. How did this end up spreading the Black Death from Asia to Europe? And think about cultural diffusion. So, under what means just mean why do you think? Why do you think? Why and how do you think the Renaissance spread all around? Um, maybe on these different trails and things into Western and Northern Europe, and maybe even out back east to Asia. Think about other things that were going on before this, other things that we talked about um, that were maybe going from place to place. So think about that when you answer number three. Okay. Number four is asking us to kind of go to a different spot. So it says a lot of talented, brilliant minds were able to share their gifts in a lot of new ways. Click the Brunelleschi link under the Renaissance art, architecture, and science. What was one of his most famous buildings he constructed, and what was one of his inventions? So I think we're going to find that in this next section under the Renaissance geniuses. Okay, so some of the most famous, groundbreaking Renaissance intellectuals and artists and writers include the likes of. So we have Leonardo da Vinci, Italian painter, architect, inventor, and Renaissance man, responsible for painting the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Um, Desiderius Erasmus, he was a scholar from Holland who defined the humanistic movement in Northern Europe and translated the translator of the New Testament into Greek. Rene Descartes, the French philosopher and mathematician, regarded as the father of modern philosophy, famous for stating, "I think, therefore I am." Little side note: I took philosophy in college and I hated the class, but it's I guess something you got to learn. Anyways, Galileo, Italian astronomer, physicist, and engineer whose pioneering work with telescopes enabled him to describe the moons of Jupiter and the rings of Saturn. He was placed under house arrest for the views of a heliocentric universe. We'll talk about that at another time. Copernicus, mathematician and astronomer who made the first scientific argument the concept of the heliocentric solar system. So since we've seen it twice, the heliocentric just means that it's the sun that's the center of the universe, not the earth. Because until this point, everybody thought that the earth was the center of the universe. Thomas Hobbes, he's a hater, English philosopher and author of the Leviathan. Geoffrey Chaucer, English poet and author of the Canterbury Tales. Giotto, Italian painter, an architect whose more realistic depictions of human emotions influenced generations of artists, best known as his frescoes in the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua. Dante, Italian philosopher, poet, writer, and political thinker who authored the Divine Comedy. Niccolo Machiavelli, we talked about him in Miss Calabrese's class, the Italian diplomat and philosopher famous writing The Prince and the Discourses of Livy. So remember, he's the guy that says it's better to be feared than loved. Okay. Titan, the Italian painter, celebrated for his portraits of Pope Paul III and Charles I, and his later religious and mythical paintings like Venus and Adonis and Metamorphosis. William Tydale, English biblical translator, humanist, and scholar burned at the stake for translating the Bible into English. William Byrd, English composer known for his development of English madrigal and religious organ music. John Milton, English poet and historian who wrote epic poem Paradise Lost. William Shakespeare, good old Billy Shakespeare, English's national poet and was most famous playwright of all time, celebrated his sonnets and plays like Romeo and Juliet. Donatello, um, Donatello, he was an Italian sculptor celebrated for lifelike sculptures like David and commissioned by the Medici family. Sandro Botticelli, he's an Italian painter on the birth of Venus. Raphael, another Italian painter who learned from the Da Vinci and Michelangelo, best known for the paintings of Madonna and the School of Athens. And Michelangelo, Italian sculptor and painter and architect who carved David in the